Good morning, class. So as you know, this week we've been talking about things that you see in fall. And if you think back to our Clifford book, when they first went past the store, they had flowers and different types of fruit. When fall came around, it was replaced with pumpkins, and then there were different varieties of apples. So our story today involves apples, since that's something we see in fall. But there's another thing that I want us to think about and talk about. And that's understanding how other people feel and treating people kindly. So we're reading a story today about an apple, and it's a story about friendship. Now the story is called Bad Apple, A Tale of Friendship. And when I look at this cover, that doesn't look like a bad apple to me. Do you think he's really a bad apple, or is he an okay apple? I think we ought to read it to find out. So our book is called Bad Apple, A Tale of Friendship. And it's written and illustrated by the same person, Edward Hemingway. Now, some of your parents might know that last name. He's actually the grandson of a very famous author named Ernest Hemingway. So this is his grandson, and this is the story that he wrote, A Tale About Friendship. Let's see what we can learn from this bad apple. It says, Mac was a good apple. He shared his toys with the other apples, helped Granny Smith pick up after art class, and loved to dive fearlessly into the watering hole. On a sunny day, Mac could bob for hours. Now, bobbing is the same thing as floating. And one of the things that you sometimes see at parties in the fall is people will bob for apples. And they put apples in the water and they float, and you try to pick them up with just your teeth. So this says, on a sunny day, Mac could bob for hours. On cloudy days, Mac would search for the perfect pillow of green grass to take a long nap. In his dreams, it was always sunny. But one day, as Mac lay sleeping, it began to rain. Can you see those streaks? That represents the rain coming down. Soon, all the little creatures in the earth around him poked their heads out to look for higher ground. Some of them found safety under the large toadstool. Do you see that cricket right there? Others crawled onto stones and pebbles, like this ant. But one small worm, do you see him right there? Had another idea. When Mac woke up, he was covered in raindrops, and he wasn't alone. This is what he says. You just won't believe the dream I had. A funny little worm was tickling me right here. See where he's pointing? And now I can't seem to get him. And the worm says, out of your head? It was you. And that's how Mac met Will. Will showed Mac how to fly a kite. See, he turned a leaf into a kite. Fly himself. And play in the dirt. He loved making a mess. Mac took his new friend to the watering hole to clean off. He couldn't remember a better day. Now look at this picture. Look at their faces. Do you see how their mouths are turned up in a smile? When I see people smile like that, I think they must be happy. Until he took Will to the orchard. Now, an orchard is a grove of trees. It's kind of like a farm for things that grow on trees. And one of them says, look at Mac. He's got worms. Mac's a rotten apple. I'm not not rotten. I'm quite sweet, actually, is what the worm said, Will the worm. So they left. Were these other apples being kind to Mac and Will? They were being kind of mean in what they were saying to him. Will cheered Mac up by reading aloud some of his favorite novels. He was a bit of a bookworm. Mac liked the adventure stories best. He also liked it when Will finished his sentences for him. The most exciting part is when the pirates find treasure in the dirt. But the next day it happened again. Ha ha, it's the bad apple. Ew, worms. These apples are not kind, are they? And no one in the orchard would play with them. Not even the crab apples. Bad apple, they said. Crab apples can be so mean. That night the two friends sat alone on the grass without saying a word. In the morning, Will was nowhere to be found. So in the morning, Will was nowhere to be found. And scribbled in the dirt it says, "You are a good apple, Will." Mac went back to playing with his orchard friends, diving fearlessly into the watering hole and painting in Granny Smith's art class. But nothing was the same. What do you think he's feeling here? He had a really good friend, didn't he? Will was really kind to him. And now Will is gone. How do you think he feels? I would think he'd feel pretty sad. There was a hole in Mac that he couldn't fill. Not a big hole, just a teeny tiny little, a small hole just big enough to fit. And nobody finished his sentences. Mac had to find Will. He searched low, he searched high, and in between, in the dirt around the watering hole, and just when he had given up all hope, he looked up in the sky. Guys, what's this? Do you see how that's a kite? Do you remember how Will taught him to fly a kite? I bet if he follows that kite, he might find Will. Let's look. Did he find him? I see a kite, and I see books, and I see a worm. It looks like it's Will. Mac knew he'd rather be a bad apple with Will than a sad apple without him. I was just hoping I could. Help me turn the pages? How did you know? Because you will always be a good apple in my book. Good and happy. And there's nothing bad about that. So, Mac had the apples that he played with, and he had the worm that he played with. Who was kinder to him? Who treated him nicely? It was Will the worm, wasn't it? Were those other apples kind? No. I want you to think about the way you talk to people. Are you using kind words? Or are you using words that make people feel bad? I want us to work really hard as a school family to make sure that we're always using words that are kind and make people feel good. Okay? Today in your journal, can you show me an adventure that Mac and Will might go on? Or maybe you can show me a time in the book when Mac didn't feel so good about himself because the other apples were being mean. Now, typically, we've talked about this some in other books, apples wouldn't have faces on them like that, right? But we know this is a pretend story. So in our pretend stories, apples can have faces. Let me see your apple with a face. Make it Mac, and let's see what kind of adventures he has. Are you ready? Okay, guys, remember, after this, if you haven't done your ABC songs and welcome songs, make sure you do that as well, okay? See you guys soon.